The Tuskegee syphilis experiment was a pretty horrific thing where the US didn't inform hundreds of poor, black men that they had syphilis for over 40 years to observe the natural course of syphilis in humans. A good portion of them were killed through it after suffering symptoms of syphilis like mental illness, loss of vision, deafness, paralysis, etc. Just to clarify, they were not infected with it. They had it but were not told they had it and were given placebos and such even though a cure came out during the course of the study. So they basically let them spread the disease and die without helping them or clung them in on that they had. Still pretty horrific. The Hollywood casting couch, basically movie producers, directors and executives requesting sexual favors from actresses in exchange for roles. I read one intervene with an aspiring actress who basically said if a producer wants to meet her at the studio, he's looking to offer her a role in something. But if a producer wants to meet her at a restaurant, he wants to sleep with her. Weinstein may have been busted but I have no doubt it's still going on. Just remember, there were plenty of women who willingly slept with Weinstein in the hopes of getting famous. People like that always exist and as a result, there will also always be people who take advantage of that. That older phones are purposely being slowed down. My Pixel 2 battery used to last me 2+ days before the phone was paid off. Within a week of paying it off, my battery suddenly started lasting me about half a day with minimal use, and the phone started running slowly as well. Come to think of it, the GPS issue started around then too. When using maps, the GPS can tell me where I am, but it doesn't update location once I start navigation. The U.S. Department of the Treasury poisoned alcohol during Prohibition and also the prohibition against alcohol was focused mostly on the commerce aspect of it. The buying and selling of alcohol was against the law, but the production of it for personal consumption was not. So if the White House wanted to produce or distill alcohol on the grounds of the White House, and serve it to guests as a gift, it probably wouldn't be illegal. And it was something very generous like one person could produce something like 100 gallons of wine a year if he so desired. That's a lot of alcohol for one person. So all the organized crime, all the bootlegging, the entire industry that gave birth to the American mafia, was because most people couldn't be asked to break their own beer. Imagine if a criminal syndicate in America sprung up because most people refused to learn how to bake their own bread or boil their own rice. I'm not saying that beer and wine are easy to make, but it can be done with Stone Age technology. The government really did hide what crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. There was absolutely a conspiracy to keep it secret and it took decades before the truth was uncovered. Was it a crashed flying saucer? No. Was it a weather balloon as the official story went? No. The mysterious debris that the rancher found and was subsequently whisked away by the government was neither a weather balloon nor an alien spacecraft. It was a high-altitude platform designed to detect nuclear detonations in the Soviet Union. See, back then there were no satellites or high-flying surveillance planes, so in the early days of the Cold War the US military launched high-altitude balloons with sensitive and highly classified detection equipment into the skies above New Mexico. It was called Project Mogul. One of them crashed, a rancher found the wreckage, and when the military found out what he'd found they quickly took it away and pushed out a cover story that it was just a weather balloon. The project was declassified in the 1990s and the truth came out, but some people still cling to the crashed saucer theory. Sorry but no. There the government lied about a top-secret project. Not surprising considering what was happening at the time, but the truth is that there was a conspiracy. Just not what people think. The United States really did engage in a secret and illegal bombing campaign in Cambodia during the Vietnam War. And when Pol Pot was kicked out of power, after which he was the Khmer Rouge retreated into the jungle as rebels, and the US and the UN refused to recognize the new Vietnam and Soviet-backed government. Pol Pot was Chinese-aligned for a decade. That's right, the Khmer Rouge kept their UN seat representing Cambodia for years after they were overthrown and the whole world learned about the genocide. Operation Northwoods is a classic example of a Western government planning a false flag against civilians to justify war. I do see this example refuted in the sense that it was merely in the brainstorming stages and not operationally ready. But it was meant to be implemented fairly soon after the memo was written. US planners anticipated Cuba would sign a defense pact with the Soviet Union in the coming months. Such a pact would have tied America's hands behind its back in trying to thwart the Cuban Revolution. I think it's noteworthy how the general's casualty throw in a reference to Remember the Maine, in connection with planning a flash flag. I wonder if it's an open secret in military and intelligence black ops circles that such incidents were actually carried out from the inside. One scenario from Northwoods, the swapping of civilian airliners with drone aircraft, is thought by some 9/11 truthers to have been used to carry out the September 11th attacks. The Black Hand did give Gavrilo Princip the gun he used to kill Archduke Ferdinand. They had other assassins on that route. And even though this hits up all the marks of a conspiracy theory, it's true. The Serbian Prime Minister knew about the plans and tried to discreetly warn about it but was misunderstood. The original assassination plan included grenades, but every assassin failed. Princip actually intended to kill one of his fellow assassins, who was caught and failed to commit suicide, when the Archduke happened to pass on his way to visit wounded officers in the hospital. Jimmy Savile, UK television personality in the 70s and 80s, did a lot think millions of charity work and volunteered as a porter in his local hospital. All sorts of rumors and gossip about how he was a sexual predator. Turned out rather deeper than that. Now he's been dead a few years, it's come out that he was probably the most prolific sex offender Britain has ever seen. Young women, children, corpses, he'd F anyone and anything. How did he get away with it? Simple. Turns out that around the same time, lots of people in positions of power, including a number of MPs, were also doing these things, and they were all looking out for each other. The reality that there are powerful networks and communities of sexual pedrados, and that they are politicians, religious leaders, actors and entertainers and business elites, is the most disappointing fact for most of us to have learned in the 21st century. When I was a kid, the insane conspiracy theory was that powerful groups of people are hiding the truth, and that truth was usually something ridiculous like space aliens or people having psychic superpowers or something paranormal like that. And now it turns out, oh, those powerful elites are just perverts. It was confirmed that the government was spying on and keeping tabs on those they deemed threats, including both Malcolm X and MLK, and the files were unsealed. A college professor of mine discovered there was a file of her. She'd been arrested at a protest in her youth, and apparently that was enough to end up on their radar. Nixon's aide, John Ehrlichman, admitted the war on drugs was made up to target hippies and blacks. The actual quote: "You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities," Ehrlichman said. "We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did." Green energy involves burning our precious trees. In my town they are clearing out a whole forest region to put up solar panels, something that could be installed on the rooftops of commercial buildings. This same solar company has sued and brings lawsuits onto towns that can only afford to pay their town clerk or elected official $75,000, but brings the town and the official in the suit to defend themselves for millions of dollars. They are horrible pieces of human excrement. Also, they drive pimped-out pickup trucks, the owners, and when it is all said and done, and the panels don't work anymore, leave the town the bill to clean it up because they file for bankruptcy to do it again. Someone replied, "I did a study on biomass and how bad it actually is, and my study involved Drax power plant in the UK." I commented on a post about biomass under the World News Reddit, and the strangest thing happened. Drax apparently had an account and responded. I never got to see what it said though, because the mods removed it, and weirdly I couldn't find it on Reddit either. Ultimately, many biomass companies are farming perfectly good trees to make biomass pellets, which has a lower energy content and efficiency than coal. Drax power plant actually lied when I visited them and said the pellets were made from waste wood. I think the word lie might be a little harsh, as they're the customer of the biomass company, so they're probably being lied to. Project MKUltra and Operation Mockingbird. The CIA mind control program and the still ongoing Operation Mockingbird that still influences the media today. Both of the official classified CIA documents were released confirming them to be in fact real. The documents were released 6 years apart, Operation Mockingbird in 2001 and MKUltra in 2007, with another document of the same subject being released in 2018 saying the project was also performed on dogs. Currency change in Czechoslovakia in the 50s. Newly installed communist regime was failing to recover the economy from World War II. Years after war, trade was still limited, food coupons were in use, and people hoarded large amount of savings that weren't possible to spend. The Communist Party assured people that they will never lose their money, and meanwhile they have been secretly printing new money in Soviet Union. Once it went public, the exchange rates were set to rob people of savings and property. If a person had almost no savings, he got a good course, something like 1 new for 10 old crowns. If a person had good savings, course was much worse, and rich people were treated the worst, most of their money not invested. A lot of factors: workers had a big savings, and there were cases of worker strikes against the Communist Party. The USA assisted Nazis' Operation Paperclip and the whole von Braun making the US space program. Government and big corporations spying on you. Just check terms and conditions on any software you use. A few years ago there was even a scandal of Samsung TVs spying people straight out of 1984. Government and tech companies try to find ways of influencing and controlling you via technology and using stolen data. Cambridge Analytica. US and other Western countries were as bad as the USSR and the Communists bloc, but due to colonialism and a larger resource pool, the effects were felt only by people in small communities which have been silently set away from history, and you're accused of propaganda if you go dig them up. Forced sterilization of Native Americans in US and Canada, populations in Puerto Rico being used as lab rats, human zoos in Belgium, etc. The US is the largest colonial state at the moment. USSR used a nuke to create a sea for irrigation. They managed to get the water, but the area was so radioactive it could not be used. The US almost nuked itself, multiple times. The US can nuke anyone in the world with no internal consequences, if someone deems their interests threatened. US nuclear doctrine from the Cold War.